It's quite possible. There we are.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. Welcome out. We are here today with author Emily Bernath. And she is here. We're going to be discussing her book, Broken Lenses, Identifying Your Truth in a World of Lies. There it is. And we will be discussing that in just a minute. I want to tell you of a couple of things that are happening here at Weller Bookworks that you might not be aware of. So many of you may know that we have been closed to foot traffic since the virus hit. And we continue to be closed to foot traffic. We are definitely citing on the side of caution, especially considering the new spike in cases. And so for the at least the next little while, we will still be at no foot traffic in the store. We can still do internet and phone orders. You can order any book, including Broken Lenses, through our website, wellerbookworks.com, or you can call us always at 801-328-2586. We do have curbside pickup, and we'll also ship. So it's still easy enough to get your books. And hopefully, you know, if things get better, we'll be open to foot traffic sometime soon. Anyhow, I want to welcome you to our first virtual event. We are hopeful that we'll be able to do more of these in the future, but here we are on our maiden voyage with Emily Bernath. I keep saying Bernath?
Yeah.
Bernath. So as I said, Emily's book is Broken Lenses, and this is the lovely Emily right here. She's going to, if you would, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you got your BS in chemistry at the University of Toledo. You came out here to get your master's in business administration at the U. What else can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so I guess anytime that people know that I'm an author, their first assumption is that I got some sort of a degree in English. So I'm sorry, that's not true. My first love as a child was math. I did flashcards for fun. I'm weird, I know. But I love math, and chemistry was really like the first class that kind of like challenged me in a fun way. I don't know. So I pursued that in college. And I am a big extrovert. I know I'm the minority when it comes to authors who are extroverts, but I love people. I love talking to people. I love getting to know them. And that's actually one of the main reasons why I pursued business in grad school and not chemistry. I did research in a lab for a couple of years. Great experience, loved the team, you know, but it wasn't something I saw myself doing my whole life. And I figured, well, maybe I can take this, you know, into a business and work on, you know, with more people somehow. So I did that, and that's what brought me out to Utah originally. So I moved out here almost 6 years ago, which is crazy. And then I finished that in 2016 and entered the corporate world. I was a data analyst for a couple of years. And while I did that, I was almost the same exact time, May of 2016, when I started that job and when I started writing Broken Lenses for the first time, or at least had the idea to do so. So I worked that job and wrote, you know, did my 9 to 5, wrote in the evenings, got up again, did the same thing for a little over 2 years, and then got a publishing deal for this book, and the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, that brings me to a question that we often get asked at in-house events, which is, well, there's a couple, you know, what led you to write this book? People like to know, you know, how long it took you to write the book, and you just said 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
And so if you if you might. Oh, and first, you're from a small town in Ohio, right?
I am, yeah.
How small a town are we talking?
I think there's about 7,000, 7 to 8,000. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so how did you become such an extrovert coming out of such a small town?
I didn't really live that part of my identity out well as a child. I was one of the quietest people in my grade. I sat in the corner, I did my own thing. Yeah, I had a handful of really great friends that I made in kindergarten and kept all the way through school. That was never, so I didn't really have any challenges finding friends, which I'm very blessed for. They just, yeah. So I didn't really have any reason to want to talk to other people or be that like socially out there. Yeah, that didn't really become a part of my life until college.
Well, it's probably good that you did become that because it probably helped you in writing this book and in helping others. Do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what brought you to writing this book?
Yeah, so my love for people was definitely a big part of that. So for me personally, I got back into seriously like going to church and finding a relationship with God after my experience with sexual assault. So I very much include that in part of what I talk about in the book, and that's a big part of who I am. And so yeah, after that happened, I was like, what the heck, God, why? And it was a really low point, dark moment in life, and for the first time really craved some sort of female mentor or just someone I could go and talk to, because I was hurt. And I didn't really have that. I hadn't invested in relationships with other women in community like that beforehand. Like I said, I wasn't that social. um, so I I ended up finding that in a community, uh, a few months after. Someone approached me and invited me back to church with them and totally changed my life. And I know that I'm not the only woman that goes through things like that. And I know I'm not the only one that needs the community that I needed. And so that's a commitment I made to myself, is that I would be that kind of woman for other women that I knew that I needed back then, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, one day I actually got approached by a couple of women asking me about leading a small group. And I was like, great, I've wanted to do this for years. And then it just kind of hit me in the middle of this meeting. I was like, well, they didn't really tell me, there's like, dream it up, Emily. What does it look like? What do you talk about? Where do you meet? And so, there's a lot of great women doing ministry out there. I am not here to knock anybody else's ministry, but they're not me. And I knew that I had a message that I wanted to share, that I wanted to talk about if people were going to join this, whatever group this was, right? So that's where it started. And as for like the topic in general, I'm kind of a blunt person, but I mean, not really. Like if you talk to anyone who knows me, they would be like, oh no, she's pretty blunt. But I think I highly value the truth. I want people to know what's true about them. And for me, one of the heart verses behind my writing in general is John 8:32, that says that when we know the truth will set us free. And I want people to be free, and I want people to know the truth that sets them free. And so I was just like, all right, what's true about us? So that some of the chapters are like, I am beautiful, I am creative, I am smart. What does this all mean? How do I believe it? And, yeah, how can I make it a part of my life? Right. So yeah, that's kind of where it started. But
It it seems like there's a great amount of positivity and hope that comes through this material, but I can't imagine that it's easy reading.
no, probably not. But I think I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm okay, so as much as I love talking and getting to know people, I am like not that great at small talk. Like, I really just been like, who are you and why? And like, let's go to the deep places, right? That's kind of how I am. And you know, I can't change me. So I take that same sort of approach. The book inside of it, there's a lot of questions to reflect and answer along the way. And really just, you know, tangibly explore, like, what does this mean for me? How can I apply it? And what does the Bible have to say about it? Right. You know, so yeah. And that's a lot of it's because I originally wrote it to lead a small group. So it's like, all right, we're going to answer these questions. We're going to come together, talk about it, really do life with each other and be a safe space that we can get to know each other and, you know, yeah, I don't know, grow as people together. So, yeah.
So this almost sounds like, just to make a comment, I see some people are starting to show up here in the feed. If you have any questions, go ahead and write them down in the comment field, and I'll keep up on those and make sure Emily can answer anything you might have. So it sounds like that it might have begun sort of as a workbook for this group that you were taking
It
on.
did, yeah. And actually, originally, when I started writing it, so integrated in the chapters, I include my own testimony as well, my life story. But that's not what it originally was. That was, you know, a leap of faith even for me along the way. Like at first, the first draft of this book was strictly just the lessons and the content and what I wanted to talk about. And I was like, this isn't about me, God. Like, I'm not going to write about, they don't need to know. Right. And got a little bit of conviction along the way that I was like, oh, yeah, you know, giving people something to relate to and showing, you know, how you've applied this in your own life is important, and gives people a safe space to know they're not alone, which is also one of the chapters in the book. But yeah, it was weird because I have shared verbally like my story with people more times than I can count. Like I said, love talking to people about those kinds of conversations. But once I got started writing it, it was a lot harder. And I realized that, you know, I really just wasn't surrendering control of my own story to God. I was really leaving it up to me to say it, you know, quote unquote, say it right, you know, like I can ever do that. But yeah, going through that process and writing my story in the book was a lot of healing, even for myself, that I didn't realize that I needed. So.
Well, it sounds like the book, though it may hold therapeutic qualities for those who may read it and take it to heart, it's hard to attach yourself to certain sort of, I think you said lessons, if there isn't a story within that you can attach yourself, a human element
Yeah.
to it. And so I would imagine that there were therapeutic qualities to you in the writing as well.
Oh yeah. This was a big learning process for me, a 2-year learning process of, you know, because like I said, it's, you know, I was always known as the math nerd. My nickname in grad school was the human calculator. Like, that is just what I do. And so even the fact that God would ask me to step out of what I view myself as, because I mean, the reality is God sees us all as way more than we will ever see ourselves as. Like, his love for us is so much greater than we even know how to comprehend. Right. So, I was a little bit confused. I'm like, God, do you know like what I do? Like do you even know who I am? Which is a silly question to ask because, you know, he made us. But yeah, it took a lot of, you know, eliminating, you know, self-limiting beliefs that this is even something I could do. So yeah, it was good
Yeah,
though.
one of the things I was going to ask you is if you have any kind of background in writing at
uh
all. I mean, I'm sure you have academic writing background, of
Yeah,
course.
I was gonna say, do lab reports count? Because I spent many nights up until like 3 a.m. writing lab reports in college. That was a big extent of my writing, you know.
Do you have any sort of plans for a follow-up to this, or an idea for something that you might move on to?
I do, yeah. So this is just the first book of the Broken Lenses series. I recently signed a publishing deal for the second book. And yeah, I will be finding out soon when that will be released, and we'll let you all know when I do. So
That's exciting.
Yeah, so this one is more like, who am I? What is true about me? And the second book kind of goes more into like, what is true of others and how do I see other people? So kind of looking more externally versus internally, but same idea.
Is the second one, did it evolve at all out of the group that you originally assembled this one for? Did anything for the next one kind of evolve out of that group?
Well, it's funny you asked. The group that I had that meeting for originally never actually started.
Oh.
So yeah, you know, it's funny, and I kind of think of it this way, because God knows how we see ourselves, right? And God he wouldn't have been able to tell me like, hey, Emily, you should write a book. I wouldn't have believed him, like, if that's all the conversation was, right? So it's because I didn't view myself as someone who could write, or well, anyway. So he knew already that I had a passion for women's ministry, and that's something I did want to do and would say yes to. And so he's like, hey, Emily, I know this is something you want to do. Consider doing this to make that happen. And so I don't think that I'm not doing women's ministry because the group didn't start. It's just my own limiting view of what I thought this was going to be. Like, God had such bigger ideas for that. Like, now I can bring out my message to people all across the country versus just in my living room, right? So
yeah. So are there any particular sections of the book that you would like to touch on, or tell us about, read something from, anything like that?
You know, as far as like, what are my favorite chapters and stuff like that, for me, the one that was, you know, most applicable to my life early on, that really made God real for me, was that I'm not alone. And that is that's chapter 3, and I put it in there because I knew how important it was for me to know that. And this was in middle school, but you know, I grew up in a Lutheran church and went to catechism 6th through 8th grade. And so one of those Wednesday nights at catechism, one of the leaders was just like, you know, you're never alone. Like, God's always there. And they had like no idea what was happening in my life. But something about me, I have epilepsy. It's not like severe or anything. I live a very normal life. I had a couple of seizures as a baby, but yeah. So I don't know. I associated growing up that, like, you know, I always had these, like, I call them, you know, nightmares, and I associated them with being alone. And anytime I was afraid of being alone, I had these nightmares and I hated it. And so once someone told me that like didn't have to be my reality, that I actually wasn't alone, I went my middle school self into my room, never really prayed seriously in my life, but I was like, God, if you're there and I'm not alone, like, take away my nightmares, please. And it was insane, but that same night, like, I didn't have another dream for over a decade. God has since given me back good dreams, but I haven't had a nightmare since. And I was like, oh man, I really am not alone. Like, that's crazy. And took away my fear instantly. So that was pretty incredible. And I hope people can have similar experiences like that, having truth revealed to them through the book, whatever that may be for you. For me, that was huge. Yeah.
Do you find that your background in math and science, do you find that had any sort of influence or correlation, correspondence with the material in this book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And some people are like, think I'm crazy when I say I have a chemistry degree and now I'm an author, but really a lot of it in school in general is like training you as a way of thinking. Like, how do you approach, situations or problems, or, a lot of science, like the scientific method. So like, a lot of how I approach reading the Bible comes from that perspective versus a literary perspective or a, historic perspective or whatever, right? So for me, it's like I'm a big actions based person. The book of James is my favorite book in the Bible, and James writes in chapter 2 that faith without action is dead, and I take that very seriously in my own life. Like, you gotta, so yeah, I guess, I'll read the Bible a lot of times and be like, all right, well, this is what you say, God, like, I'm gonna test it, right? Like, if I do this, like, the truth sets you free. All right, I want to be free, so I want to know the truth, right? Like, and
Yeah.
almost I research it out, and I'm like, all right, what is true, and what freedom even comes from it, right? Because it's so vast. Like, we just are our mindset of God is so small a lot of times, and He just has so much in store for us that if we would just ask, that's Matthew 6, I believe, that He'd blow our minds. And He wants to. Yeah. So I would say, yeah, of more of this analytical approach to reading the Bible in general.
I sort of skipped over this question, and I think maybe we've covered it, but I think it's important for you to give your statement. But what is the message that you hope to impart with this book?
Yeah, so I would say I said a little bit of that earlier with the John 8:32, that when you know the truth will set you free. That's the main thing I hope people get out of it, honestly. But it's a book about identity and even intimacy, which is like, I don't know, I don't think people view the word intimacy in the context with the Bible too often, but God really wants us to get to know Him and ourselves, and all that He has for us. And I sought out this relationship, in the wrong way for too long, and God was like, enough is enough. He knows more about us than we even know about ourselves, honestly, and sees way more in us than we know how to see in ourselves. And we get to have access to this all-knowing God who loves us unconditionally at all times in all places. And yeah, I think that's pretty incredible. So really just a book about, empowering, beliefs about yourself and how you can really live a life of, fullness, right? Instead of fear and anxiety. I see too much of, those worries and fears get to people in the world, and all they really do is hold us back. And none of those worries or fears, anything that causes that, is not from God. Like, end of story. So yeah, I really want people to be empowered to live their best life.
And if you're just joining us, I'm Lane with Weller Bookworks. This is author Emily Bernath. Her book is Broken Lenses, Identifying a Truth in a World of Lies. If you have questions, and there it is. If you have questions and you're joining us here on the Facebook live chat, just go ahead and put them in the comments, and we'll make sure Emily gets those whenever you'd like. I think this idea of, Emily, the reminder of not being alone is really important. I think kind of especially right now when,
Oh,
everybody is
absolutely.
stuck in their homes.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is this sense of uh, a communal oneness in the
Right.
sense that we're all going through this virus together. But I think it's also easy to feel like you're on an island at the same time.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
imagine that, not that not that your book is specifically dealing with that, but this idea that you promote of support is pretty important.
Agree. Yeah. And actually, yeah, I like that you say that. And two, like, God thinks that is so important, that for us to know that we're not alone. It's actually one of the first truths listed in the entire Bible, right? All the way back to Adam and Eve in Genesis 2:18, I believe. It literally says it is not good for man to be alone. Like, that is why, God created Eve, one of the main reasons, right? So yeah, it God really wants us to know how important that is, that we weren't made to be in isolation. That is yeah, that's not from God at all. And there's a difference between, like, distance, social distancing, or whatever, the hot words are today, and truly, like, isolating yourself from people, like we're doing right now. We're staying connected. We might not be in the same room, but we're not alone. We're here right now. And yeah, I've been, encouraged seeing how people are, still trying to get together and be a community, even with everything that's going on in 2020 here. Yeah.
It's so interesting how we have adapted to staying in contact with people, because you're right, that connection is necessary, and the feeling of knowing that you're right there and I'm talking to you right now, those are important things to remember that we can still do no matter really what we're going through.
Yeah.
I think it's so admirable, the sort of the message of peace and love that you are putting out there with this book, because as we talked about, talking about your own story is not easy, and most people's story, a lot of people that might be drawn to this book, I imagine their story is not easy to tell.
Yeah. There's, yeah, a lot more people than we think affected by those sorts of things. And for me personally, it's sexual assault, and that's where my passion is in ministry too. Yeah, because I know firsthand, like, you go through something like that and you feel like the most unlovable person on the planet. Like, you feel gross. Nobody's gonna want to associate with you or talk with you or be in a future relationship with you, whatever. And all of that is a lie. And it just breaks my heart when I see other people who are going through those same feelings that I went through. And yeah, so I don't shy away from telling my story for that reason, but it wasn't easy at first. Yeah, it was interesting, but I'm committed to being a light to that community, however I can be.
We had talked about your involvement with a nonprofit called Reveal to Heal International. Would you like to say a few things about that?
Yeah, so I'll give a little bit about, their mission in general. And yeah, so they are, a nonprofit, a faith-based nonprofit, dedicated to preventing all forms of child sexual abuse, helping survivors heal from its effects, because what we were just talking about, it makes you feel completely isolated, and that's just not true. That just because something like that happened to you, that you can no longer be loved or worthy or valued. Your value is not determined by anyone else other than God who made you. And you are valuable enough to die for, in his opinion, and that never changes. So I really want people to know that, and also a little bit about their mission statement is that we believe that it's time to start addressing topics of sexual abuse prevention and awareness in the faith environment and its impact. And that communities of faith can be safe communities for people who have been victimized. And so.
And you obviously in particular are very driven by women's rights of all kinds, right? You obviously are a beacon towards someone they can look towards, who can be, a champion of sorts. And I think that it's something that we can all work towards being better at.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not any better than anyone else because I'm doing these things. I think that all looks different for each of us, but I mean, we're all here for a reason and we all have a part to play in making the world a better place. And I'm just doing what I can to play mine. So yeah, we're all, stronger together and in this together. Yeah, we're more alike than we think.
That sounds like a good place to leave this. Do you have any other comments or anything else you would like to mention?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, just thank you guys for joining, and I'll keep you guys in the loop as far as launching the second book goes. I will know more soon.
Yeah, stay tuned to Wellers, because I'm sure as soon as hopefully we'll know, and we can look forward to an event with you on the next one.
Yeah.
I would like to thank Emily Bernath for being here. Her book is Broken Lenses, Identifying Your Truth in a World of Lies. Will you flash that one more time, Emily? There it is. You can buy that through us. Yeah, you can go to wellerbookworks.com. There's a link on the Facebook page that you're watching right here. And we will figure out a way to get Emily to sign you a copy. And if you want it shipped, we can do that. Otherwise, we can have you come pick it up curbside. But this video will be linked on the Facebook page for a while. So if anyone's missed it, you can watch it again. And once again, I want to thank Emily for being here. Thank you, Emily. I sure had a nice conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And yeah, so have a good afternoon. Take care of yourself, stay safe, wear your masks, and we'll see you next time on our next virtual event. Thanks again. Have a good one.
You. See ya.